Let's talk about a military plan that literally rewrote the book on modern warfare. We're talking about Operation Instant Thunder, the incredible air campaign that really set the stage for the Gulf War back in '91. And it all kicked off with one huge question.
Okay, so picture this. It's August 1990. Saddam Hussein's Iraqi army, which is massive, has just rolled into Kuwait and taken over. The whole world is on edge, and the US and its allies are staring at this exact problem. The old way of doing things would mean a long, brutal, and incredibly costly ground war. But what if there was another way? A totally radical new idea was starting to form.
And that idea, well, it had a name: Instant Thunder. This was an audacious plan. I mean, it sounded like something straight out of science fiction. The goal? To basically win the entire war from the sky. To cripple the enemy before a single soldier's boot even needed to hit the ground.
So what was it exactly? Well, Instant Thunder was a strategic blueprint for paralysis. The goal wasn't just to beat up the Iraqi army. No, this was about going for the jugular, striking right at the very heart of Saddam Hussein's regime. It's what military planners call the center of gravity, the source of an enemy's power, their strength, and their will to fight.
I mean, this strategy completely flipped traditional warfare on its head. Forget army versus army. The plan was to go straight for the enemy's brain and nervous system. First, you take out the leadership. Then, you blind them by destroying their communications. After that, you break their bones by smashing their infrastructure. And only then, once the enemy is deaf, blind, and totally broken, do you even think about dealing with their army in the field. Okay, so where does an idea this radical even come from? You have to understand, this wasn't just some small tweak to the old way of doing things. This was a completely new playbook. And it was all built on this fascinating and powerful model from an Air Force colonel named John Warden. He called it the Five Rings Theory.
Warden's big idea was to see an enemy state not as one big blob, but as a system, kind of like a target with 5 rings. Right in the middle, the bullseye, that's the leadership. The next ring out, that's your system essentials. We're talking electricity, oil, the stuff that keeps the country running. Then you've got infrastructure, the skeleton, right? Roads, bridges, airfields. Then the population. And only on the very, very outside ring is the army itself. See, traditional war always went for that outer ring. Warden said, nope, let's aim for the bullseye.
And this quote from Warden himself just sums up the entire theory perfectly. The whole idea is, why waste time, money, and lives chipping away at the outermost layer, the army? Instead, use precision air power to strike directly at the center. If you can take out the leadership and the system's essential functions, that army out on the front lines will just wither and collapse on its own.
So that's the theory. Sounds pretty brilliant on paper, right? Elegant even. But the big question is always, does it actually work in the real world? Well, let's take a look at how this plan went from being a concept to a massive, real-life air assault over the skies of Iraq.
All right, so the plan gets drawn up back in August of '90. For the next few months, the coalition is just building up its forces, getting everything in place. Then bam! January 17th, 1991, the air war kicks off. And for over a month, that's it. Just a relentless, non-stop campaign from the sky. The ground troops, they didn't even move in until late February. And by that point, the Iraqi army was already on the ropes.
And when I say relentless, I mean the scale was just mind-boggling. We're talking about over 100,000 individual air missions or sorties. Just imagine that. Planes in the air 24/7, hitting all those strategic targets we just talked about all across Iraq and Kuwait. The world had literally never seen anything like it before.
And the result of that massive air campaign? Well, when the ground war finally started, it was over in just 4 days, 100 hours. That's it. The Iraqi army, one of the largest in the world at the time, was already defeated. The air campaign had done exactly what it was designed to do. It had paralyzed them.
Now, this kind of stunning success just wasn't possible before. It was all thanks to a whole new generation of military technology. I mean, for the first time ever, we were all watching it live on TV, right? F-117 Nighthawk stealth fighters hitting targets in downtown Baghdad like they were invisible. We saw Tomahawk cruise missiles launched from ships hundreds of miles away and laser-guided bombs hitting their targets with pinpoint accuracy. This was the tech that allowed Warden's 5 rings theory to become a terrifying reality.
So you can see the impact of Instant Thunder goes way, way beyond just the liberation of Kuwait. It really marked the beginning of a whole new era in warfare, and honestly, its echoes are still felt in every single conflict today.
What we're looking at here is a fundamental shift in strategy.
Warfare moved from the old way, mass bombing, just grinding the enemy down in a war of attrition, army against army, to a new way, strategic paralysis, network-centric warfare. You don't target armies, you target the systems that support them. It was a complete paradigm shift.
But was it a flawless victory? Of course not. Nothing ever is. The legacy of Instant Thunder is pretty complex, and it's really important that we look at the criticisms, because they reveal where a theory like this has its limits.
So critics will rightly point out that when you target system essentials, one of Warden's core rings, you're not just hitting military targets. You're destroying a country's power grids and water treatment plants, which has severe, long-lasting consequences for civilians. And then there's the big one. For all the military brilliance, the ultimate political goal was missed. Saddam Hussein was still in power. This really exposed a blind spot in the theory. It was brilliant at dismantling a state's ability to function, but maybe not so great at dismantling a regime's political hold on power. Okay, so that's the critical view. But on the flip side, supporters of the campaign point to some pretty undeniable strategic successes.
They argue, and it's a very compelling point, that without the air campaign, a ground war could have been a bloodbath. It might have lasted for months and cost tens of thousands of lives on both sides. Instead, Instant Thunder systematically dismantled the Iraqi war machine, leaving its forces in Kuwait cut off, confused, and with absolutely no will to fight. In that purely military sense, it was an overwhelming success.
So at the end of the day, whether you see it as a triumph or more of a cautionary tale, its impact is just undeniable. It fundamentally altered the very concept of modern warfare.
And that leaves us with this really powerful takeaway. The philosophy of Instant Thunder was to win the war before the traditional battle even started. It's a concept that has shaped military doctrine ever since, and it raises a profound question for our modern age. Can technology truly make war less bloody, or does it just create new, unforeseen consequences?